News Radio 1070 WKOK presents On the Mark. It's a chance to voice your opinion on the events that affect life in the Susquehanna Valley. Call 1-800-795-9565 or email onthemark@wkok.com. Now, here are your hosts for On the Mark, Mark Lawrence and Than Mitchell.
Well, we're back to that.
Well,
Hi, this is Mark
I'm
Lawrence.
here. Where's
What does Mark
Mark?
always say? Greetings, everyone. I'm Mark Lawrence, the not-so-distinguished host of the program. Actually, Mark's on vacation this week. I'm Joe McGranahan filling in for Mark, and Than Mitchell would normally be here today, and he's filling in for himself. And
I came in for myself today.
Yes, you did.
Oh.
And the world's greatest producer who has awards floating around in outer space is Kevin Herr, sitting in the other room. On the Mark is brought to you by the Sunbury Motor Company, a family-owned dealership since 1915, 4th Street in Sunbury, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Find out more about them at www.sunburymotors.com. They invite you to visit the Quick Lane on North 4th Street in Sunbury, where they specialize in all types of service on vehicles. They include state inspection, nitrogen for tires, and they're open Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Saturday from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Check them out on the web again at www.sunburymotors.com. We have a guest today, and we're going to be talking about drugs and some other things, and we invite you to email any questions you may have to our Lenape Solar email in basket. It's always open, on the mark at WKOK.com, and we'll pose your questions to our guest, or you're welcome to call us at 1-800-795-9565, our toll-free hotline number. And again, the in basket is brought to you by Lenape Solar, located at 140 South 2nd Street in Sunbury. You can call them at 570-286-1496 and find them on the web at www.lenapesolar.com. Lenape Solar, did you know, Than, is the fastest growing solar company in the valley?
I
Did you know
did.
that?
I
Okay.
did. They shine.
Solar power isn't just a good choice, but what, Than?
They're the current
the
choice.
best choice.
They're the current choice.
The best choice. And that, with all that out of the way, we're proud to welcome this morning Dr. John Pagana. John has been a family practice physician in the Sunbury area for more years than I care to remember, because I've been going to him for most of them. John, it's good to have you with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
And one among the things that you're a specialist in is, through your clinic work and through your work as a doctor, is the drug issue. And it's something that's been a concern and a topic on this program many, many times in the past. And I guess for somebody who sees it at street level here in the area, how bad is the drug problem in the Sunbury area?
Well, drug addiction is a disease, first off. It's not a disgrace. You're not a bad person. Bad disease. It's hereditary disease. Most people inherit it. It's progressive. It gets worse. It doesn't go away. As a matter of fact, if I get at someone sober and they're drinking 15, 20 beers a day, if they stay sober for 20 years and all of a sudden somebody get a colonoscopy, they get a wrong drug, and they go back to using again, they don't pick up at 20 beers a day. They pick up at 2/5 a day, and they're dead in 6 months. So it progresses whether you use or not use. So that's why we know it's a disease. And we know it's hereditary. If both your parents had diabetes, 80% of the kids would be diabetic. Well, both parents alcoholic or drug addict, then 80% of your kids are going to be alcoholic or drug addict. I think that's the thing we're talking about, hereditary things. And it is a terminal disease. People die of this disease somehow, some way.
John, let me ask you, would you classify alcohol as a drug?
In other words, I don't know why we separated drug and alcohol. They're both drugs. And I don't know why we say drug and alcohol. We should just say drugs, because it's addiction. And unfortunately, people think that an alcoholic is not as bad as an addict. They're both addicts.
Actually, alcoholics are sometimes worse because of the lack of motor skills.
No doubt about it. The other thing is alcohol is legal, and other drugs are not legal, and that's a big problem. And let's face it, our war on drugs is not doing very well. I've been in this field for 40 years now, and I've been trying to help people. And what I would think the best answer is prevention. And that's what my daughter was on the radio yesterday with, and trying to get these kids at risk, and try to tell them, if you have a family history, you better be careful. You don't have the luxury of experimenting, which is maybe a luxury. But the thing is, they may get hooked from the first beer. I've seen it happen.
Is that a situation of chemistry in the body that
Yeah.
some people have their first beer and they can't stop? Other people, I kind of use myself.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I need a dozen beers a day, but I like a beer every day.
And that's fine. I'm not. Everybody thinks I'm against all alcohol and all drugs, and I'm against everything. I'm not against. I'm not against alcohol. I'm against alcohol for alcoholics. Now, there is a lot of family history of addiction in my family, and I've also had special training through Betty Ford Center, through rehab in Baltimore. Father Martin was a good friend, and I've lectured all over the country on drug and alcohol as well as dysfunctional families, which is what is the problem with alcohol. It's a family disease. It's not an individual disease. It affects the whole family.
Well, let's start with alcohol.
Yeah.
We had this discussion yesterday. Probably there are more people behind the wheel who have consumed alcoholic beverages than there are drug addicts behind the wheel in most instances. Would you agree with that, or is that a fair
Well,
statement?
there's no doubt because alcohol is more prominent with that. But anytime you're impaired and you're driving, see, your drinking may be your own business. Your driving may be your own business. But you put them together, it becomes all of our businesses. So, I dearly want to go out there on that road and live. And when people are drinking, drugging, and driving, that's a dangerous thing. And I'm really anxious to see what's going to happen in Washington and Colorado, where marijuana is legal, recreational use marijuana is legal. I just wonder are they going to have higher incidence of drunk drivers or drug drivers?
Well, you talk about the war on drugs and alcohol and the abuse of them, I should say. And one of the discussions we had yesterday was about these DUI checkpoints where police officials go out and try to determine if people have been consuming alcoholic beverages on the road. Than cited some statistic that showed that most of the arrests they make actually aren't for drunk driving but for other things. Are those kind of efforts worth it in your opinion,
No.
or is there some other better way to go after the problem?
Well, I think they are helpful, and I think it's important for the police department to do it because 95% of the problems the police have is with drug and alcohol. Okay, if you talk to any policeman, and I know a lot of them, I talk to them, and I told them to be real careful, especially with certain drugs that cause paranoia when they're going into a situation. And as a matter of fact, I had Brad Hare in my office right before that shooting, and 10 minutes before that shooting. I said, be real careful with the drugs we're seeing in the area. Be careful with paranoia, especially domestic abuse. These police officers are going into situations where it's very, very dangerous. I think that they have to protect themselves. The drugs that we're seeing today in our area, there's paranoia associated with withdrawal as well as the drug itself. And
Which
it's
ones
a
are big on
dangerous thing.
paranoia? Which ones?
Well, any
All of them?
withdrawals can get paranoia, but
Including
cocaine-
alcohol, of course.
cocaine.
So
and,
primarily the
meth.
withdrawal is the
exactly,
problem, okay.
withdrawal, and also while they're using the drug. So I think our police department is really dangerous at that. So if they can get an alcoholic off the road, rather than before they kill somebody, that's prevention, and I think that's what they're trying to do. But I think our best prevention in this disease is find the kids who are hereditary tendency for it and warn them and watch them closely and give them some help. And that's the best way we can do to prevent this disease from progressing.
Other
or
than
from
your
going on.
parents and hereditary, is there some sort of genetic marker that would tell you whether someone is predisposed to this?
They're doing genetic tests on that. There's probably 7 to 8 different markers, but right now all we have is you can't do a genome and then say you're going to be an alcoholic. You have to have, number one, the genetic predisposition. Secondly, there usually has to be pain in the childhood somewhere, significant pain, emotional abuse, physical abuse, or sexual abuse. And then once you have that pain and that addiction, the chemical, and you use drugs, it works. It works for you, and you know that it works. Eventually, you get that high, and feel good about it, and also you feel good about the pain you have in childhood. Then all of a sudden, you start using to feel normal, and that's when you get into stage 3 and stage 4 chemical addiction.
So you progress through the whole range.
Exactly.
What's the end? The end is
the
death, right?
The end is, either you die or you get better. You don't see old heroin addicts, do you?
Well, I
They
don't
either
know.
die.
Well, yeah, you do, but
Yeah,
they may not be very functional.
No, but the thing is, they either die or they get better. That's the two choices.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And this is a terminal disease. People die of this disease somehow, some way. Boating accident, alcohol, or they die. They die in auto accidents. They kill other people.
That's unfortunate.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
one thing if you take yourself. It's another thing if you take somebody else with
Exactly.
you. We have to take a quick break. We are talking to Dr. John Pagana. Our topic this morning is drugs, alcohol abuse, prevention, problems that we're seeing. It's the wide range. If you have a question for Dr. Pagana, please feel free to call us at 1-800-795-9565 or email our email inbox on the mark at WKOK.com, which is brought to you by the nice folks at Lenape Solar. The entire program brought to you by the Sunbury Motor Company. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back.
While looking for a vehicle, you know that if it sounds too good to be true, chances are it's too good to be true. You get the runaround, gotta go from place to place. Well, you can just skip all of that and go straight to Sunbury Motor Company. Sunbury Motor Company has been satisfying more customers and selling more cars since 1915, so you know they've got it right. No offers that look good on paper or online, and then you get disappointed when you see them in person. Sunbury Motor Company offers a lineup few other auto dealers in the area can compete with. With the inventory of Ford, Hyundai, Kia, and Lincoln vehicles, there will be no problem finding the right vehicle that fits your needs and your budget. And the friendly, knowledgeable staff's ready and able to help you with everything from the test drive to the drive off the lot. See for yourself at Sunbury Motors. Sunbury Motors, Ford, Lincoln, Hyundai in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury. And Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf. Look for them online anytime at sunburymotors.com.
An important part of the Big Ten's growth has been BTN. The president of BTN, Mark Silverman, joins us today on the Steve Jones Show, 3 to 5, News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Welcome back to On the Mark. I'm Joe McGranahan along with Sam Mitchell. With us is Dr. John Pagana. We're talking about drugs, drug issues. Feel free to participate by calling us 1-800-795-9565 or emailing us at onthemark@wkok.com. We're talking a little bit in the break about addiction and how over the years it's changed. And I'm curious about one thing. The research, I'm assuming, is ongoing because originally you could put cocaine, and when the first Coca-Cola came out, the formula included cocaine, and it was advertised as the perfect guardian of health. And marijuana, which originally I can remember seeing movies, I'm an old movie buff, from the 1930s where somebody took a smoke of a marijuana cigarette and the next thing you know their eyes are bugging out and they're dancing around upside down. And
that was still a film that's a favorite among users.
But is the research ongoing on the effects of these drugs, and how has it changed thinking over the past few years that you've been involved with it?
There's more research being done on drug and alcohol, brain chemistry, and things like that now in the last 10 to 15 years than it has been in the last million years, okay? So there's a lot of studies being done, okay? And you read a lot about them, and I keep up. I read 150 articles every day, medical journals. And so and especially in the drug and alcohol field, I do read an awful lot that way. And basically, we know the effects on the brain, and some of it's very concerning. To us, we know that with the PET scans and the special MRI type of things, where it affects the brain, how it affects, and every individual is differently, and that's the important thing. The thing that bothers me about the marijuana situation is that the young kids who use will get some brain damage, and that's bothersome. I know from the kids I deal with that use occasionally, they dream dreams and do nothing. Okay, so they're become much more lethargic. Okay, so that's what concerns me. I mostly see the kids who's using every day and who can't work, can't function. And when they go to rehab, they do pretty well. And then they come back and they say, Doc, I'm doing pretty good, but you know what? I used to be able to add up those numbers like nothing. Can't do that now. That's brain damage. The lung issue is a factor with marijuana too, because most of it's smoked, and we do see emphysema at a younger age with chronic marijuana users, and that's a bad situation. Okay, this is what we're seeing now. As far as the medical marijuana thing, that's a different thing. If it's going to help a kid with seizures, I say let them do it. I'm not against that. I think that the idea is But it should be followed by a medical center, and it should be done research like we do with any other drug.
Well, and the delivery system wouldn't be smoking,
It
would it?
would not be smoking. No, it would be probably oral. And that kind of thing. And I think I'm not against anybody using marijuana, but I want it to be studied. And I want to prove that that's a better drug than the drug we have currently for that disease entity.
But you agree it's not as bad as it was portrayed in some of those early
No.
films.
And the other thing is a lot of the studies were done at low percent THC. And now we're seeing very high percentage THC because of chemistry. Again, the cigarettes that we had 20 or 30 years ago are a lot different than cigarettes we have now. There's more sugar in it, much more nicotine, and the filters are different. Well, the same thing's true in marijuana. We have much higher doses of THC.
It's grown that way, isn't it? Than, you would
Yes.
be the authority on
What-
that.
what
too,
was
would you
that?
not?
Grown-
They grow marijuana. It's possible to grow marijuana genetically to increase the THC or
Or
the high
decrease it, which they do for the drug.
Yeah.
Of course, because in Colorado it is a commerce. And they are selling it. What they're doing in Colorado, as part of the study, kids don't get it as much anymore because it's not on the street the same way. I'm sure it's not perfect, but and also it appears that heavier drug use has gone down with the legalization of marijuana. Now, is marijuana dangerous to you? I would not advocate anybody using any drugs, though I just admitted to drinking beer. But if you do, what happens? How do you take care of yourself? Now, I agree with children. How about adults? Why would adults be bothered by all of this? There's not necessarily brain loss there.
Well, we're not sure of that.
No, we're not
Some
sure, but we think
studies
not.
show that that's not true, and that's especially with the higher percentage than amount of use you're using. But we are seeing some brain damage there in adults too. But it does affect the child under 14 versus over 14. There is brain development that changes, and so there are some studies there. I'm anxious to see what is going to happen in Colorado. First of all, and Wyoming. Or Washington.
Washington,
rather.
yeah.
But I want to see what their numbers are, what's going on, what's happening with this. If indeed drug use is down, I've never seen that before, but I think that's a good idea. We know that the driving and marijuana use has increased. We know that they didn't collect as much money on taxes as they thought they would because they thought there would be a big income.
I think they ran out of product for
Well,
one thing, didn't they? They sold more than they thought they would.
No, because most people are getting it cheaper through medical, so they're using medical means to get it cheaper. So I'm worried about that medical reason. I don't think a family doctor, even though I'm boarded in addiction medicine, I don't want to be able to write this to people. I want a neurologist to write for seizures. I want if we're treating something else, say cancer patient, I would like to have oncologist at a medical center do the studies. So they say marijuana is better for nausea from chemotherapy than the other drugs we have available for that.
Well, the
I wanna
argument
see
years
if the
ago
studies
was
are
that
done.
it was anecdotal, that
Yeah.
there was no positive proof that marijuana...
Exactly.
Is that still the
well,
case?
this is in medicine. We want 1,000 people over here, 1,000 people over here. We want the doctors don't know what drugs are given, so that it's called a random
Double-blind?
double-blind
Yeah,
study.
okay.
So that's how we make decisions. Unfortunately, on 60 Minutes in 2020, what they do is they put their hand around this guy and they said, this guy had liver cancer and we gave him Laetrile. Remember Laetrile?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was that from
Donahue
walnuts or
was saying these
something?
doctors
Peach
should
pits.
keep it
Peach
away
pits,
from Laetrile. Well, Laetrile was actually cyanide. It was from the pits and of the seed of that, and it was actually a very dangerous drug. But it proved to be no value at all. But when the studies were done, there was no value at all for Laetrile. So you don't hear that anymore. So I think the same study should be done before I recommend to give it to somebody. I would make sure that it's going to be helpful.
Well, one of the problems, and I think it's still true, the federal government doesn't allow people to study it because it's illegal. They'll arrest the doctor who tries to study it.
They should change the schedule on this
Yeah,
and
Schedule
make it
I.
a schedule so you can study the drug, okay? And that's the important thing, to be able to change that schedule. I think that's the...
Well, here's one that I just heard on the news this morning, that the federal government was asked about using food stamp certificates or cards or whatever that card is for marijuana purchases in states where it's legal, and there is nothing in the current law that prohibits that. The only prohibitions are you can't use it at strip clubs to buy cigarettes or in bars.
Well, I think they'll update that. I have a feeling that they just haven't addressed
but that's what I'm saying.
that
We
problem.
have the change in these laws, and this whole thing is a moving target. It doesn't stay the same very long. And government and technology, what role do they play? How fast can they catch up, or how
Basically, I
fast
think
should they be
government's
catching up?
very much involved in what's called enabling, okay? Because when they give some money to people, okay, and they use it for drug and alcohol, and they're making the addiction worse by using that, and they're also taking the money away from the family. Okay, and the money is, instead of buying food, they're buying drug and alcohol. Okay,
Well, of course, that's
and
a real
that's a
problem.
bad situation. So what they did in Florida, Governor Christ tried to drug test people to make sure they're sober. Well, the ACLU came in and they knocked it out, but while they were doing it, when they started doing it, they found that 25 to 35% of people either didn't want to have drug test done, or they were actually users or positive. And so they got those people help by giving them, the worst thing in the world for an addict to have is money, because they can keep on. David Kennedy was given $20,000 a year from his, or actually a month from his grandfather, and he couldn't get off heroin because he had the money. The worst thing in the world for an addict to have is money. So when you give people money, you are enabling them. They are buying the drugs they keep using. When they hurt, they may want to get help. And I think that's a real important thing. And I think with the medical assistance, the way we're doing this, we should be drug testing anybody who we suspect maybe have trouble.
What about people who, and there's been a lot of talk about this, and I know Than and I are on different sides. I support it. Drug testing for people who get federal benefits or state benefits.
Well, again, if you're giving money to an addict, okay, then you should know that.
Are you assuming that somebody getting medical or getting help is an addict?
Not at all.
I think that's a bad assumption.
That's a bad situation, and I agree that. However, if you're giving that person money to buy drugs, that's enabling.
How about medical?
I'm going to argue with both of you, because if I have to take a drug test to get a job, why shouldn't somebody take a drug test to get my money through federal benefits?
I am in the ACLU. You should not take a drug test to get a job. Your value to the company should be judged on how you perform.
But if our goal is to treat these people, don't we have to identify them?
But do you want somebody else helping you to do something, and you're on a building, 1,000 feet up? Do you want somebody who's using marijuana, alcohol, or any other drug to be there for you and may not be able to do the things you need? Flying an airplane, would you want them to use alcohol flying an airplane?
I would be much more worried about people working with me on a high building or flying an airplane using alcohol. They don't drug test for that. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
They do.
Well,
They
you
pull
can
pilots
pick
off
up
planes.
an alcoholic a
You
lot
know
quicker.
what? Probably
You can smell
pilots.
it on them.
Yeah,
You can smell it on them.
that's true.
But I'm saying, if our goal is to help these people, we have to identify them.
Exactly.
And they don't tend to identify themselves, do they? Do people come into you and say, "I'm a drug addict"?
Let me tell you, in the military, I spent 2 years in the air. I got drafted as last group of doctors to be drafted, and I was in the Air Force. I was a flight surgeon, and in the military they handle it very well, because if they suspect there's a problem, okay, the commanding officers comes in and say, "You're not going to use anymore, and I'm going to give you a drug that'll stop you from using." And they go to the commanding officer every day and he gave him the drug, okay, and abuse. Doesn't work 100%, but it does, and it also has some side effects. We don't like to use it as much. However, it worked well. When you have a commanding officer that tells you this, that system works real well, okay? However, and in real life, I'm not sure how you pick these people up, but certainly I would like to know if a guy is in stage 1 or stage 2 addiction, why he's working, and he's working with things, and you pick that up and you help him and get him help. I say he's not a bad person. He's got a bad disease. You go ahead and help him, get him treatment, get him sober, and warn his children, because they're likely to have it too. And that's important that we pick these people up early and help them, rather than to just fire them and let them go.
What's the recidivism rate on people who have been helped?
It depends. If they do the 12-step program, which is the best we have, okay, if they really follow up, if you've been 20 to 30 years in the program, you're going to be sober the rest of your life.
I think it's 1 out of 3 go through programs and get cured, or something like that.
And the other thing you have to remember...
Yeah, get cured, 1 out of 3.
The other thing you have to remember is if we give half this room alcohol and we give the other half heroin, okay, 100% of the people in heroin will be addicted, whereas only 20% of the alcoholics would be alcoholic. So, you're talking about
not from just one shot.
No. I'm talking about over time. Yeah, and the thing is, heroin is much more addictive, as well as other drugs are much more addictive than alcohol. However, the same things apply, and we need to help these people.
Wouldn't it be a good idea if somebody were addicted that they could walk into the hospital and say, I'm addicted, I need help, and please don't call the police, because now the police are called in. If you turn yourself in, you're apt to be arrested.
Well, guess what? They come into my office all the time with that. The problem is I don't have sometimes the ability to treat them. In other words, I do the best I can to detox them, but problem is they have to go sometimes. Alcohol and phenobarb are 2 real bad detoxing because they could die there. The DTs and alcohol and phenobarb withdrawal. However, nobody ever dies of heroin withdrawal. Nobody ever dies of heroin withdrawal. They feel like they're going to die.
They want to die, yeah.
But it's a hard withdrawal, and I help them withdraw as long as I have another family member who can administer the medications. We try to get them sober, and I've gotten a lot of people sober that way. Suboxone is another drug that they use.
Do you use
However,
methadone?
I don't use methadone. I don't use Suboxone. To me, that's enabling. I try to get them into a 12-step program as quickly as possible. If they get into those 12-step, the 12-step program is the best thing we have out there for this treatment. As a matter of fact, it's the best spirituality we have in addiction.
We're talking to Dr. John Pagana, and our topic this morning is drugs. We invite your participation. Dr. Pagana is going to be with us in the second part of the program, so if you've been saving up your questions, feel free to get on the phone and dial us at 1-800-795-9565 or email us at onthemark@wkok.com. We'll take a break for the news, and we'll be back with more of On the Mark. This is WKOK Radio in Sunbury, Pennsylvania.
CBS News, I'm Frank Sedapani. Tonight's the night President Obama will tell the American people how he plans to deal with the threat posed by Islamic State terrorists in Iraq and Syria. Live to the White House and CBS News correspondent Peter Mayer. What should we expect to hear, Peter?
Well, Frank, safe to say much of the focus will be on what the president says or maybe does not say about potential airstrikes on terror targets in Syria. This is something he's been contemplating for some time and is said to be ready to order, but there's no indication it will happen anytime soon. The White House indicates the major focus tonight will be on the offensive military actions against the terror group in Iraq and the president's effort to build an international coalition to fight the Islamic State threat.
In Baghdad, CBS's Margaret Brennan tells us Secretary of State Kerry is working diplomatic channels to put the skids under ISIS.
Baghdad is the first stop on Kerry's tour of the Middle East. He'll head next to Jordan and Saudi Arabia to try to enlist Sunni regional leaders to help cut off funding and fighters who are flowing into this country to join the ranks of ISIS.
It's been 2 years since freelance journalist Austin Tice vanished in Syria, kidnapped apparently, but it's not believed he's being held by ISIS. Tice's mother, Deborah, broke her silence on his disappearance in an interview with CBS's Clarissa Ward.
I do not accept that he is missing. I live in a place where he is coming home.
Russia says it carried out a test of its new intercontinental nuclear missile and plans 2 more. Defense expert Lawrence Korb says the test violates any number of nuclear test ban treaties.
Putin is trying to show that he's a great power and that the NATO countries should not be messing with him, because if they do, the consequences could be catastrophic.
The United States, Mexico, and 3 Central American countries are working on a new strategy to manage the flow of immigrant children. Live to CBS News correspondent Vicki Barker.
Attorney General Eric Holder met his counterparts in Mexico City yesterday. They're now enlisting local prosecutors in a new group aimed at slowing or stopping the flow of children. Since last October, the U.S. has detained more than 66,000 unaccompanied child immigrants, mostly from Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, and detained another 66,000 immigrants traveling as families. Frank?
NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell says he can't rule out the possibility that Ray Rice will be allowed to play again, but he told CBS CBS This Morning any speculations premature.
I haven't thought about that because right now I think the focus is he's got a lot of work to do. The family has a lot of work to do. We're going to obviously provide whatever resources we can to help them work through that.
Goodell suspended the star running back indefinitely after seeing a video of him punching his then-fiancée in the face. The cleanup is underway in parts of the desert Southwest where monsoon rains this week flooded roads and homes. Greg Monteith says his place in Mesa, Arizona is a mess.
They're going to all need new carpet, new flooring. The mold is going to be insane if it's not kept up with.
S&P futures are down 2 points. This is CBS News.
We help farmers make the best use of their land, which means healthier crops, higher yields, and less harvesting hours, which is good news for a growing population and good news for the environment. BASF, the chemical company.
You can make a world of difference with a little flu shot. When you get your immunization at Walgreens, you'll help provide a life-saving vaccine to a child in need through the UN Foundation's Shot at Life campaign. Thanks to customers like you, last year we helped supply 3 million vaccines. This year, let's give even more. Simply get a shot and give a shot. Walgreens, at the corner of happy and healthy.
Valid through October 13th, 2014. Aggregate donation up to $1 million. Vaccine subject to availability. Some restrictions may apply. See walgreens.com/get-a-shot for details.
The dollar may not go as far as it used to here at home, but that's not the case when Americans travel abroad. CBS News correspondent Bill Whitney tells us why.
The U.S. economy isn't exactly booming, but we're doing better than other parts of the world, and that's made the dollar stronger against other major currencies. It's up 6.4% since the beginning of May. That means Americans are paying less for imported oil and imported goods like cars and computers. It also makes overseas travel less expensive. The dollar's at a 14-month high against the euro and a 6-year high against the Japanese yen. On the downside, a strong dollar makes American products more expensive overseas, which hurts U.S. exports. Bill Whitney, CBS News.
The corner office isn't for everyone, apparently. Only a third of the workers in a Career Builder survey said they aspire to leadership positions. More men than women want to be the boss, but overall, fewer than 1 out of 10 workers is aiming for a senior management position. Frank Sedapani, CBS News.
Policies issued by American General Life Insurance Company, Houston, Texas. Not available in all states. For details, visit AIGdirect.com.
On March 3rd last year, Henry W. faced his own death with incredible courage. He wasn't in an accident. He wasn't ill. He wasn't in any danger. But he faced this reality head on. If he died, his wife and children wouldn't be able to pay the mortgage, make the car payments, or keep up the life they'd had. His family would lose everything. So he picked up the phone and called AIG Direct. He found out that through AIG Direct, he could get a $250,000 life insurance policy for less than $14 a month. Now, he knows that he's helped make his family's future secure, no matter what happens to him.
Protecting your family with coverage through AIG Direct is fast, easy, and incredibly affordable. Call AIG Direct right now for a free no-obligation quote. The call takes less than 5 minutes, and you can save up to 70%. Call now. 1-800-521-0281. That's 1-800-521-0281. 1-800-521-0281.
News Radio 1070 WKOK presents On the Mark. It's a chance to voice your opinion on the events that affect life in the Susquehanna Valley. Call 1-800-795-9565 or email onthemark@wkok.com. Now, here are your hosts for On the Mark, Joe McGranahan and Than Mitchell.
Welcome back to On the Mark, brought to you by the Sunbury Motor Company, a family-owned dealership since 1915. They're at 4th Street in Sunbury and routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. And our world's greatest producer, Kevin Herr, has been driving a Lincoln from Sunbury Motors this week, and I saw it outside. I was tempted to have some sort of a small ceremony around it. It's far too good for you, Kevin. How do you rate such a vehicle?
Oh, well, it's impossible not to rate it highly, and that's why we're featuring it this
I mean, how do you rate it? I know it's rated highly.
No, I'm saying it's hard not to rate it high because of the features that are available on it, and that's why we're featuring the MKS, the Lincoln MKS this week. Give you a chance to find out a little bit more about a vehicle that you already know has a lot of luxury options, but the LED headlamps and tail lamps are adaptive as well. So actually, as you're turning the steering wheel and the angle, and it will actually make the field of vision around the dark curves a little bit brighter. So the headlights are actually adaptive to the steering wheel as well. Auto high beam feature automatically switches to low beams when it detects a vehicle ahead. And we've talked about how smart this vehicle is with sensors all the way around. It has parking assist, lane assist as well to make sure you're not drifting left or right too far over the lines, the yellow or the white line for that matter. And with intelligent access push button start, you can actually start your car remotely, then sit in the car when it's nice and warm in the winter and you're ready to go. And with all-wheel drive, you'll be able to get anywhere you need to go through the winter months. That's the Lincoln MKS. It's available now at Sunbury Motors North 4th Street Auto Plaza in Sunbury.
And it's too good for Kevin. As someone said yesterday, aren't you intimidated by driving a car that's smarter than you are?
At times I am. And when I saw the headlights move with the steering wheel slightly and open up the field of vision, yes, it was. At that point, I was intimidated.
You know what, Kevin? There was a car back in the 40s
the
Tucker would look both ways.
Well, when you turned the steering wheel, it turned the light.
Yeah,
I saw that movie.
My brother was in that movie.
Was he?
Yeah.
Where was he at in the movie?
He was the band director when they opened.
When they were debuting the car?
Yeah.
I may have to look that movie up again and see if I can find it.
He's a little smaller than he was back then. He was a little smaller back then than he is now.
We also have an email in basket, and that's brought to you by the nice people at Lenape Solar. It's on the mark at WKOK.com. Send us an email, and we'll be happy to ask your questions to Dr. John Pagana, who's our guest this morning. We do have 2 emails that came in. One of them is taking me to task, I guess, for saying I believe that people who get welfare benefits should have drug testing, and what I mentioned about the card for food stamps being able to be used for marijuana in the states currently where marijuana is legal. She says, should the person who writes Joe's paycheck be able to say that Joe can't use any of that money at a strip club or a liquor store or to buy some marijuana? Possibly not the person who writes my check, but I guarantee you my wife would say all 3 of
The
those
person who
things.
takes your check will have the answer.
The person
to
who
that.
takes my check will definitely have a comment on that, should I wind out and do it. And then we have this one from Chris Campanale, who says, isn't the first step of the 12-step program to have faith in God? How can we say that's a good program for people? Dr. John?
The first step is not. It says I'm powerless over this drug. I'm powerless over that, and it is a wonderful theologically 12-step. It's written by a physician, Dr. Bob Smith, and Bill Wilson started it, and he was talking to Bowery people, okay, and he would go down and talk to them and try to get sober, and he came back to his wife. He said, for 6 months I've talked to 1,000 alcoholics and not one of them sober. And she said, yeah, Bill, but you haven't had a drink in 6 months. So he figured out he could stay sober by trying to help other people. Mm-hmm. So there he went out to Akron, Ohio. He was an accountant in New York, and he all of a sudden had a desire to use. So he called these ministers around to see if indeed he could find an alcoholic to talk to. And so most of them hung up on him. The one guy said, hey, my surgeon's an alcoholic. And so he went over to Bob Smith's house in Akron, Ohio, and they wrote the 12 steps at that night. And it's the most powerful theological thing we've done for the last 300 or 400 years. It is powerful. When you are powerless over something else, but you have to admit there has to be a power greater than yourself. The first topic says a power greater than yourself. Then it says God as you understand him later on, and it just says God. And so you have to have a strong, the 12-step program works extremely well. It's the best we have, and it works. If they work the program hard, a lot of people say, I've been to meetings. Well, you know what? They go to meetings, but they don't participate, and they also don't work their sponsors. The name of the game is to work with your sponsor.
Well, how many people, is this the group that you were talking about then that said roughly 1 in 3 gets cured through the 12 steps?
It's about a third. If they work the program hard, it's probably if they get some time in the program. In other words, I go to a lot of open meetings, and I'm not recovering myself. A lot of people think I am, but I'm not. I go and I take patients to these open meetings. You're allowed to go to open meetings. You're not allowed to participate. But what they do is they do talk. They tell what happened in their lives and what they did about it, and you take it or leave it. Okay, you take it or leave it. That's what it is. There's no crosstalk. You don't tell people what to do. How will the sponsor do? That you get a sponsor, you get somebody you may not like, but somebody you respect. And they'll tell you what you need to do about your addiction, and they go through the 12-step program. It's a whole confession. You gotta make amends to people you've injured, and it's hard sometimes. A lot of times, I have patients come in, and I say, "I think you're an alcoholic, and I think you need help." And they storm out of my office, and about 3 or 4 years later, I get a letter, and they'll say, "You're the first doctor that ever thought I had an alcohol problem, and I do, and I'm sober now, and I want to thank you for what you did for me." So I get these thank you notes. From people for years past, and that's what we see, and that's what the 12-step program is. It's a great program.
I haven't talked to anybody about the 12-step program for quite a while, but I knew some people who went through it, and they were able to be non-believers or believers in different religions because of the business as God as you know it.
As you understand.
And it could be God within you or
exactly.
anything. So it works for almost everyone if you kind of parse words.
And the other thing that it's important, too, the 12-step is you go out and help somebody else. And I think that's important. A lot of the recovering addicts and alcoholics don't go out and help other people. And I think that's huge. That keeps you sober, okay? When you see the tragedies and things that happen in people's lives, you say, you know what? I could be there for the grace of God, except for that. But it is a powerful, you got to say that there's got to be a power greater than yourself. If you don't believe there's a power greater than yourself, you'll have trouble with the 12-step program.
How about programs like, you see them advertised on TV, and it almost looks like a quick and easy answer that probably doesn't exist, but this Passages Malibu program, are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with that. There's a lot of quick fix things. There was a guy was doing studies that said, I'll teach these people how to do with cognitive therapy, how to do social drinking, how to go from alcoholic to a social drinker. Well, all of them wound up drinking again. There was a guy who was doing studies where he said, I'm going to give these heroin addicts their own needles and their heroin and whatever they need. They can just stay in their place. Well, they quit. They all quit after a while because they liked the heroin addiction. Part of it is going out and try to find it, and then sharing needles and things like that, which, of course, leads to hepatitis and also HIV. So that's a major problem.
Well, they did needle exchange programs and things like that. Did they help, or do they still?
Well, I'm not sure if you're enabling or help, but I think if they prevent HIV or hepatitis C, it's well worth it.
Isn't it better, perhaps, to give somebody a needle and the drug rather than to have him go beat a little old lady over the head for her purse, which sometimes happens? And that's what I talked with a friend yesterday for a long time about harm reduction. And one of the problems that we have is that we harm so many people by the way we treat them. I'm not talking about you, Doctor. You sound like you do it right.
No, I agree. There's a you really have to be. Sometimes love is tender, caring love. Sometimes love is saying no, and tough love, steel love. And I think that's what we have to be able to do both for people.
What about the people around here? Going back to the drug problem, you say you see it here, which means there's obviously people dealing drugs here in the area. Is enough being done to curtail that? I mean, you talked about the war on drugs failing. What should we be doing to try and get people off of it? I mean, the people who talk to you, do they say, I'm coerced into this, or I had somebody give it to me free? What are they doing?
Well, they start out giving it to free, especially the young kids. They'll start, they get these kids hooked. Then once they get hooked, then they start charging them, and then they can't afford it, so they either go to a cheaper drug, or they go ahead and cheat from anybody. Okay.
Oftentimes, prescription drugs.
Prescription drugs is a big problem, and that's coming to a hold, I think. Neuropathic pain, which is most back pain, is neuropathic. The drugs, the morphines and the oxycodones and the Percocet and the Vicodin, they really make it worse. Then you wind up with two problems: disc problems as well as addiction. Some of the drugs that have neuropathic effect are not as addictive. They work better. As a matter of fact, the only drug that really works 100% for disc problems is the Neurontin, which is a neuropathic drug. Ultram is a neuropathic drug, but people don't get high on that, and as a result, they don't want it. But an 80 milligram tablet of oxycodone goes for $80 on the street.
Wow.
So now you get hooked on oxycodone, you can't afford it anymore, So then you go to heroin. That's $4 a bag. So now you've gone from oxycodone to heroin, and that's what's happening in our area. And then you mainline it, and then you wind up with hepatitis C, and there's a lot of problems that they won't treat you for hepatitis C until you're sober for a year.
Oh, really?
Yes, you cannot be treated for hepatitis C until you're sober for a year.
A lot of people talk about legalization of drugs. We have a fellow by the name of Howard Wooldridge, who is a law enforcement man.
Yeah, I've read his articles. Yeah.
Who is very much in favor of making it a medical problem and not a legal problem. Wouldn't heroin be better off used legally by clinics? And at the clinic, you get a lecture about quitting and can we help you, but come in next week and we'll give you another shot, and et cetera, et cetera.
You know, I don't know if anybody's ever done a study other than a study that was done in England where they did
Switzerland does that.
They gave them to they gave heroin addicts a place to stay. They gave them needles and they gave them heroin. And after 6 months, they'd like to search. They like to find the heroin themselves, so they all quit that.
Well,
so that's the thing that's probably going to happen with that. However, I think there is something to be said to try to help people, and rather than arrest them, I agree. However, dealers are a different ballgame. I think when you're dealing and you're making money on this, and most dealers are addicts themselves, so they're using it for their own help.
Yeah.
Very rarely do I see a dealer who's not an addict. Occasionally you'll see that, but most of them are an addict themselves, and they're supporting their own habit, and they're using it for. And most young kids will support it by dealing.
We have to take a break. We're talking to Dr. John Pagano. Our topic this morning is drugs. We invite you to give us a call if you have any questions you've been saving up or you'd like to ask. Our toll-free hotline number is 1-800-795-9565. Or you're welcome to email your questions to our Lenape Solar email in basket on the mark at WKOK.com. We'll pose your questions to Dr. John Pagano, and he'll be with us for the rest of this segment. We invite your calls, your participation, and we'll be right back.
While looking for a vehicle, you know that if it sounds too good to be true, chances are it is too good to be true. You get the runaround, gotta go from place to place. Well, you can just skip all of that and go straight to Sunbury Motor Company. Sunbury Motor Company has been satisfying more customers and selling more cars since 1915, so you know they've got it right. No offers that look good on paper or online, and then you get disappointed when you see them in person. Sunbury Motor Company offers a lineup few other auto dealers in the area can compete with. With the inventory of Ford, Hyundai, Kia, and Lincoln vehicles, there will be no problem finding the right vehicle that fits your needs and your budget. And the friendly, knowledgeable staff's ready and able to help you with everything from the test drive to the drive off the lot. See for yourself at Sunbury Motors. Sunbury Motors, Ford, Lincoln, Hyundai in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury. And Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf. Look for them online anytime at sunburymotors.com.
Everyone wants to stay cool in the summer and warm in the winter, but it can cost a small fortune. This is Tanya Diddy with Lenape Solar. Let us reduce your cooling and heating bills by as much as 75% with the installation of a Mitsubishi heating and cooling system. Not only can you save 75%, but you can improve the air quality in your home or business at the same time. Installation can be a lot less than what you might expect, and now is a great time to start saving. See Lenape Solar in Sunbury for complete details. Call today for a no-cost estimate, 570-286-1496.
Disruptive may be just another overused buzzword, but disruptions in business like network downtime, data loss, social media abuse, and limited bandwidth are downright disruptive. For businesses large or small, Barracuda Networks offers powerful, affordable, yet easy to implement content security, application delivery, and data protection solutions, all designed to prevent disruptions and simplify IT. For an online demo or to try any of our security or storage solutions risk-free for 30 days, visit barracuda.com/disruptive.
I had crunchy Belvita breakfast biscuits this morning. Then what did I do? Made my bed, fed my fish, got dressed, cleaned the dish, remembered to floss, but still didn't do it. Ran a lap on the track, dropped my phone, didn't crack, got in before the boss, made sure that he knew it. Just getting in, huh?
Crunchy Belvita breakfast biscuits are made with delicious ingredients and carefully baked to release steady energy all morning long. Share your morning win. Belvita.
Morning win.
Hi, this is real estate agent Dale Tittle from Bowen Agency Realtors. If you are thinking of buying or selling a home, I can help. Whether it's downtown or the rural Susquehanna Valley, buyer and seller opportunities are better than ever. Call me at Bowen Agency Realtors to find out more. Many experts say real estate is the key to long-term wealth. So start building your future with me, Dale Tittle, the house sold name in real estate, when you call Bowen Agency Realtors at 570-743-2165 for all your real estate needs.
Welcome back to On the Mark. I'm Joe McGranahan along with Than Mitchell. Our guest this morning is Dr. John Pagana. Our topic is drugs in all forms, shapes, and iterations. If you have a question, give us a call, 1-800-795-9565, or email us at onthemark@wkok.com. And Kevin Herr, the world's greatest producer, will no doubt chastise me after the program for failing to mention that all of this is available on our webcam for you to look at and see. If you go to wkok.com, click on the On the Mark tab, you will see view the video archive or whatever it is, a webcam. What are we calling it, Kevin, the webcam?
It's the live video stream.
Live
of the show,
video stream.
And
Thank
then
you.
you'll be able to find it later in the day on WKOK's YouTube channel.
Okay. Well, so the whole thing is going to be available. If you missed any part of it or you want to see it again, you can get it.
I think he chastised you. Your face is blurred. Oh, no. It's
Well,
the back of your head.
It's better than it was earlier. I was cut off. All you could see was a little piece of bald skin floating around there. We have a call coming in, but our guest, as I said, is Dr. John Pagana. We were talking about the implications of 12-step programs and things like that. Dr. Pagana, what about court-mandated treatment and drug courts? Are they playing a part in solving the problem?
You know, I have to admire the judges in our area and what they've done. I've lectured at Union County, and these judges love these people, and I think that's a valuable thing. When you have a carrot and a stick, if you don't go ahead and stay sober and follow the 12-step program and get to your meetings and get a sponsor and work hard, you go back to jail. That's your choice, and this works extremely well. I am really impressed with the sobriety that the graduates have stayed, because if they pick up again, they're going to put them back in jail.
But you did say it's a disease, so you're
It's
putting
a disease.
somebody in jail for a disease.
Yes, but a lot of times nobody wants to treat the disease. The person themselves don't want to treat the disease until they get into trouble. Once you get in trouble, then you get some help. You get DUIs, you get to.
Do you think jail helps?
I think it keeps them sober.
Well,
okay, that's one way. If someone is
for
not
30
not gonna be
days,
sober,
perhaps,
yeah, exactly, yeah. So I really think the drug court helps tremendously.
Oh, the court, I'm sure, is great.
And I think that the idea of you either get sober or you go to jail. That's your choice. And then if you decide, then your whole life changes, your whole family changes, everything changes. And I've lectured or I've talked at these graduations, and it's powerful to hear their stories. It's a powerful thing.
We have a caller, Jim from Shamokin. You're on the mark. Good morning.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Joe and Stan. Doctor, I was on Neurontin by one of my doctors at Geisinger, and I started to lose my ability to write. It looked like I had a jackhammer in the left hand, and when I was trying to write a check or a letter or something, my handwriting wouldn't write right, and it was real scratchy. So I talked to my other doctor, Dr. Mark Gilfus, at Napper Clinic, and he told me to stop Neurontin or gabapentin, and it seems like my handwriting is starting to come back again.
Yeah, well, this is a side effect of it's not a common side effect, but it's a side effect we sometimes see. These are anti-seizure drugs, okay? And you may want to think about going to Lyrica or Lyrica, and that may be another drug you could use. But it's much more expensive, by the way.
Well, are you addicted to these drugs, Jim?
I was taking it for quite a while because of a leg injury working for the municipality. And it just started, my handwriting started getting bad, and I told my doctor, Dr. Gilfus, so he started checking on it. And he says, Jimmy says, I think I'd stop the Neurontin or gabapentin.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And he, believe it or not, doctor, it seems like my handwriting's coming back now.
Well, that's good for you. Jim, thanks for calling. We appreciate your call. My handwriting's been atrocious for years, and I don't have anything to blame it on.
But we were just talking. I have natural old folk shakes, and my handwriting looks like I was on a moving train when I wrote.
Well, these aren't that typically. I mean, that was a discussion about a drug interaction or a drug.
And mine is just being old.
Are there symptoms? You know, and that it brings up a good point. Are there symptoms that parents can look for in their children? And you know, we've talked about them in the past, but have they changed, or are there new ones? Or
I tell parents. I have parents come into me and they say, you know what, Johnny was an A student. He loved football. He couldn't do enough football or baseball, and all he didn't play anymore. I don't like any of his friends he's going with. He's gone from an A to a D. You know, he does have bad attitude. The first thing I want to do for that kid is drug test him. And I said, if he refused to be drug tested, then but I think he's using. And I think that's what's happening. And maybe we can pick him up stage 2 or stage 3 addiction rather than 3 or 4. But parents are in denial as much as the kid is. Denial is not a river in Egypt. Okay, it's important that denial be a big problem. Nobody wants to have a kid to be who's addicted or addict. But would you want an addict kid or do you want a dead kid? Because that's what's going to happen to these kids. And what I'm saying to that, if we can get this kid treatment and get them help, the parents, and I say when I tell them to listen to your kids' conversations. Listen to the kids they're going around with, who they're traveling with. Go into the rooms, look through the rooms to see what you can find. This is important. As a parent, you have to do this. I had a kid who was hiding his marijuana, okay, in his dad's suit that he bought, and it says, I'm going to lose weight, and there's 3 sizes too small, and he was going to lose weight and put that suit on. The kid says he's never going to lose the weight. He hid all his marijuana stuff there. So, you know, these kids are smart. But the main thing is when you see behaviors in your children, you better make sure you talk to somebody and don't rule out drug addiction.
So changes in behavior are one of the
especially
early
if you have family history if there's family history in your family.
And it would seem that perhaps the first thing you should look at if you don't see bad friends and so forth, look under the counter where you keep your drugs.
Exactly.
Because
and also,
I think that is the huge problem that's growing now.
Tremendous problems. They're using their grandparents. They're stealing their grandparents. And you got to keep any narcotics you have or anything like that locked up because your grandkids could get it, okay? And they can just sell it, and you don't know what you're taking there.
Well, I know the police departments in the area, Shamokin Dams included, have a program where you can drop off drugs and they're properly disposed of.
Yes.
Are you doing that a lot?
Yes, I think I advise people to do that when they see those things, or to put it in coffee grounds and bury it. But we don't want to put it down a toilet because then it goes in our water supply.
Oh, coffee grounds and bury it. That means it will be in the soil for years and years and leach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the better thing to do is to drop it off so somebody can dispose of it properly and burn it or whatever they do with it.
Well, Nicole says, perhaps I missed it, but I haven't heard mention of one of the most dangerous, deadly drugs that is perfectly legal in the U.S., and that is tobacco. Yeah. Tobacco kills far more people than alcohol, marijuana, or alcohol, period. Marijuana actually has medical values and illegal, while tobacco, with all its addictive power, is one of the most accessible drugs in our society. What is being done to prevent the use of tobacco?
Well, you know, we talk to people every day. The tobacco use 14 to 20 years ago was about 40%. It's now 20%. So, yeah, doctors are doing well. And if you know that who's quit most as far as smoking are doctors, okay? Now, when I used to go to medical meetings when I first came into practice, you couldn't see the board where they were doing the videos because of the smoke. And doctors have quit. So we're not very bright people, but we found that out that that's not good for you. And I think that we have to work through it with our doctors. Unfortunately, nicotine is much more addictive than other drugs sometimes. And I want you to realize that the cigarette our grandparents smoked is a lot different. Higher nicotine, higher sugar content, and also the filter is made up so you get more of it. And so in reality, kids are more addicted to smoking. And that's real important. But there are there are things out there called Chantix is out there, nicotine patches, gum, withdrawal symptoms. The main thing that people have to understand, if you want to stop smoking, you're going to be nervous for 6 weeks, but you're not going to be nervous the rest of your life. If you go back after 6 weeks of smoking and you start smoking again, the first 20 cigarettes will make you more nervous. There's nothing in nicotine to relax you, okay? And that's important to understand that. But yeah, we do get a lot of people stopping, and these drugs do help.
Do they? Because I mean, it seemed to me I had tried everything. I left when I was a smoker some 30 years ago or more. I would do things like leave my cigarettes in the car. So I had to walk out of my office and go outside, get a cigarette, and come back in. I tried smoking low tar, low nicotine cigarettes. That didn't work. Finally, cold turkey, because I had an incentive to do it, was the only thing that worked. And so is that the best way to quit?
When they went to the low tar, what happens? You suck harder. Okay, you'll get the same amount of nicotine, but you're just going to work harder to do it. The other thing is, what we do is we try to get the people to break their links, get under a pack of cigarettes a day. Break your links. In other words, I always have my coffee and cigarettes. Separate those. I always have my cigarette after a meal. So you take it an hour or 45 minutes or so after you eat, and then you have your cigarette. So break your automatic links first.
Yeah.
You're more likely to be a non-smoker.
That does work, because I know I had to, every morning I would have coffee, tomato juice, and a cigarette at the same time. I haven't had tomato juice in 30 years.
I have to tell you that my quitting was cold turkey because of a circumstance of coughing up something I couldn't identify. And I had been trying for a long time, and that stopped me cold. But it's been 34 years, and I still will not pick up a pack of cigarettes that is opened.
That's right.
I just can't, because I know that if I put that sucker in my mouth, it would come back and haunt me.
Withdrawal symptoms go on for 6 weeks. However, cravings go on for a lot longer than that.
Maybe ever.
You do have cravings, and that's a common thing, but withdrawal is only 6 weeks.
I can remember when I first quit smoking, I used to love to go in smoke-filled rooms. Other people here still smoked, so I would look for meetings where people with smokers so I could get some of it. Now, my eyes start watering, my nose stops up, so you eventually do get over it, and it's probably best that you give it a shot. Anyhow, we have an emailer, not an emailer, but someone who left a voicemail at the station's phone line, says, can you ask Dr. Pagano to speak more on the topic of the treatment and recovery for severe alcohol addiction? He mentioned that heroin addicts, they can help, but alcohol addicts take a special type of treatment where they are when they are in the last stages. I know someone who I think needs to address this. They are drinking a case of beer in 6 to 8 hours frequently. If he could speak more on about treatment, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Well, the best treatment we have is what's called prevention. So if you can get these kids at risk, younger age, talk to them, explain to them, and you can avoid the disease entity. In other words, if you have both parents alcoholic, 80% of those kids are going to be troubles with drug or alcohol. So those kids, you need to work real hard. Best treatment is wait till it doesn't get that bad. However, with alcohol, the best treatments are to get detoxed. Okay, you have to be detoxed, because especially if you're using a lot, especially a case of beer a day, that's a lot of booze. You need to be detoxed. Okay, once you're detoxed, then you need to go to a 12-step program. You do 90 meetings in 90 days. You got to do 2 things every day: not drink and go to a meeting. Okay, and that helps, and that really does. Some people need rehabs if they fail at outpatient counseling. Some people have pain and hurt in childhood so severe, we have to work on that painful physical abuse, emotional abuse, or sexual abuse. They work on that issue, but it's very painful work. So we don't like to do that. We like to have them sober for a year before we do that kind of work. However, sometimes we have to go to that first.
Isn't there a need for the addict to want to quit or have to quit? I think that's step one. That's the 13th step. You have to start
someone who's
zero.
drinking that much beer would obviously not realize they had a problem, would they? I mean, that would
not necessarily.
be in denial.
I have patients who are not alcoholic, but they're heavy drinkers, and they drink regularly. And I'll say, listen, your liver enzymes just went up a little bit. You better stop drinking. They stop drinking. They don't have to drink anymore. The doctor told me not to drink anymore. That's not an alcoholic. I had a patient who had 1 drink a year, was an alcoholic. He would go home every Christmas Eve and have 1 drink and beat his wife. That's alcoholism.
Merry Christmas.
It's what happens to you when you drink. It's not necessarily how much you drink.
So people who functionally consume a great deal of alcohol might not be drunk at all, or an
exactly.
addict.
In other words, most people who get a tolerance, they can drink an awful lot, okay, and get up and walk away and not even be drunk, and that happens a lot. It's that's called tolerance, and this is what happened to the principal at the school there. Her tolerance was tremendous.
Yeah, obviously, if you can consume that much. We have to take a quick break. We'll be back. We have another email that's come in, which we'll read and ask Dr. Pagana to answer the question that they pose in that. Our toll-free hotline number is 1-800-795-9565, or email us at onthemark@wkok.com. We'll be right back after these messages.
Come on home to convenience. Come on over with style.
Come on home to Kohl's Hardware for GE LED energy-saving light bulbs. Their long-lasting performance and outstanding energy efficiency will illuminate your home with soft, warm, dimmable light.
GE LED bulbs are extremely durable and low maintenance. GE LED bulbs can last up to 5 times longer than compact fluorescent bulbs, making them perfect for hard-to-reach light fixtures.
If you want to save money on your monthly energy bills, cut down your lighting energy consumption by up to 80%, and not have to think about replacing a light bulb in your home for years to come, visit the knowledgeable professionals at Kohl's Hardware and let them shed some light on the new GE LED energy-efficient light bulbs.
Save money and energy with GE LED bulbs at Kohl's Hardware. Sign up for exclusive online offers year-round. We're right around the corner, right here in your hometown. Come on home to Kohl's for GE LED energy-saving light bulbs.
Come on home to Kohl's.
Do you have unfiled tax returns or owe the IRS or state more than $10,000? If you don't take action now, your tax problem is only going to get worse. Seizure of property, bank levies, wage garnishments, and potential criminal prosecution. Call the experts at U.S. Tax Shield for help at 1-800-334-5070. Our tax advisors will review your case for free, inform you of your rights, and give you a guaranteed quote. And we have an A+ rating with the BBB, so get protected. Call U.S. Tax Shield now at 1-800-334-5070.
You need a website. Why not do it yourself? You know your business. With Wix.com, you can create a professional website all by yourself. It's easy and free. With Wix.com, you don't need to be a programmer. Just use the intuitive drag-and-drop website builder. There's no limit to how creative you can be. It's your website, your style. Show the world what you can do. Create your own stunning website today. Go to Wix.com. It's easy and free.
Shade Mountain Winery invites you to come along for fun. On Friday, September 12th, they'll be having a wine tasting at Ard's Corn Maze on Route 45, Lewisburg from 6 till 8 p.m. You can also buy your favorite vintages. Enjoy music in the maze, too. Then on Sunday the 14th from 1 till 4, Johanna and Anthony and Jack Pyers will be performing on the deck inside If It Rains along Route 104 between Middleburg and Penns Creek. Bring a picnic basket and enjoy. Find out more at ShadeMountainWinery.com. Shade Mountain Winery is also in Millheim and the old train station in Riverside.
An important part of the Big Ten's growth has been BTN. The president of BTN, Mark Silverman, joins us today on the Steve Jones Show, 3 to 5, News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Welcome back to On the Mark. I'm Joe McGranahan along with Dan Mitchell. Our guest this morning, Dr. John Pagana, who is practicing family physician in the area and who has extensive experience in drug and alcohol abuse and prevention and treatment.
Who has more people who know him and respect him than anybody else in the Valley. I have to say that.
Yeah, that's not good for humility. I need to have more humility.
Okay, John, you're a bum. Is that
okay? That's what I want to hear. Exactly. I need
So
to
you
hear
call-
one. I need one good humility every day. I
So
need
you
that
call
every day.
yourself a doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, a lot of people call him that, and a lot more because he does tremendous amount of work in the area with his clinic and his,
Absolutely.
I don't know anybody more dedicated to promoting good health and good, clean
I've
living
been
than Dr.
blessed.
John.
I've been blessed in this community, and they've taken care of me and my family, and all my children are either doctors or dentists, and I thank the community for this.
Well, you've given a lot back, sir. Here's an email we had in. It said, my grandfather, who was born in 1903, was an alcoholic his entire adult life, and in the 1960s he was institutionalized at Danville State Hospital. Yesterday I was telling my wife that if my grandfather would have been an alcoholic today, he would have spent his entire adult life in and out of jail. Isn't there a better way than the criminal justice system to deal with addicts?
Yeah. I wonder if your grandfather may have had what's called dual diagnosis, meaning had a mental illness that cause them to drink. In other words, manic depression patients, when they get manic, they use. 50% of manic depressive people get into trouble with drug alcohol. So that's a dual diagnosis. That could have been the problem there. But you're right. I think that we do protect people a little bit better now. It's tough sometimes. You have to do tough love sometimes for these people, and the family has to do tough love. You know, if you have to lock your child out at 18 or 19 years old and say you're not welcome in this house until you get sober. That's hard to do. You hear it's banging on the door. Sometimes people have to hurt before they get help, and the worst thing in the world for these kids is to have money. And when they have money, they're not going to get sober.
If we look at somebody like that who spent their entire life in and out of hospitals as opposed to jails, is that the case today, or would they be more likely to be sentenced in the court to some sort of inpatient
Well, you know,
rehab?
if indeed they're a threat to this society, okay, in some way, somehow, drunk driving or something like that, yeah, they go to jail, and maybe if he would have got to jail, got sober for a while, maybe he would have taken up the 12-step program and got sober, and maybe you would have had a grandfather, and that's a shame that you lost your grandfather.
Okay, Bob
This
from
disease
Sunbury.
kills people.
You're on the mark with Dr. John Pagana. Good morning.
Yes, doctor. I have a question. How can you help somebody who gets hooked on prescription drugs?
Well, it's a very common thing. 25% of the addiction is prescription drugs. And that's why you have to protect your drugs very closely. That's important. Once they get hooked on prescription drugs, you need to be aware that there are doctors who out there who do write a lot of these prescription drugs. And they do it because they get the patient keep coming back. And some of it's good and some of it's not so good. I would suggest that people on strong pain medication get to a pain center, a reputable pain center, and get to a pain doctor, because sometimes there's other things that can be done besides narcotics. As a matter of fact, neuropathic pain is much worse with narcotics than they are with some of the other things available that we have. Drugs, you get hooked on it, then you have to go through withdrawal. And you also have to get followed up, and maybe need a 12-step program if indeed you get hooked on prescription. A drug is a drug, whether it be alcohol or anything else. And whether you prescribed doesn't mean it's less addictive. That's for sure. We have to be careful with drugs.
Does that answer your question, Bob?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Good
very
luck
much.
to you.
Thanks a
Joe
lot.
from Milton, you're on the mark with Dr. John Pagana. Good morning.
Hi, Joe.
Yes. Good morning, John. I had a question. I heard you saying earlier that drug addiction was a disease.
Yes. Yes, in 1956, the AMA listed it as a disease. There's certain chemicals that go on in the brain and certain genetic predispositions that happen in the brain, and we know it's a disease because if you take a set of twins that both have genetic predisposition for drug and alcohol, and you separate them and put them into different homes, this is what they did in Germany, they found the equal amount of addiction. The other thing that happens, if you stop using for 20 years and you pick up, you don't pick up at where you would have been if you continue to use. You pick up at where you would have been if you're using all the 20 years. So that's why we know it's a disease and not a disgrace, and also it's hereditary most of the time.
Well, yeah. I'm not a doctor and nowhere near, don't know anything about. But as far as my understanding is, just an ordinary layman, a disease is something that like you get sickle cell anemia or cancer, or Ebola, whatever, is something that you have no responsibility other than trying to keep away from it or eating properly. What I'm trying to say here is this, that an alcoholic, until you get him or her to realize that they have a problem with alcohol, you can't really help them.
You're right, and
That's
I think
true.
you're right there. They have to admit they have a problem.
However,
for
this, but if it's a disease, then they're not culpable for it. You know what I mean? They're not responsible for it, because how can I help it if I get some kind of disease? You know what I'm saying? Is my understanding of disease.
Yeah, but this is hereditary disease. Okay, we know that. We also know that
alcohol.
The alcohol is a hereditary disease. Yes, it definitely is. So the idea is that they are causing this disease themselves. Sometimes if they have pain and hurt in childhood, either physical abuse, emotional abuse, or sexual abuse, sometimes that takes the pain away. That's not the proper way to treat the pain, but that does. And then they get hooked on it. So you need to help them. It's a disease.
Easier to help these people that have these problems if they know that they have something in that. In other words, it's their own desire. In other words, when I used to smoke, my flesh craved nicotine, as anyone well knows that has that problem. But it didn't come. It came when I picked up one of my mother's cigarettes, and started heaving on it and coughing the first time, and until I finally got used to it and got hooked on it. But it wasn't a disease; it was something I brought upon myself, and then I became addicted to it, like alcohol. If I start drinking alcohol,
I see what you're trying to say with that.
You know what I mean?
But it is a disease because there's certain symptoms and signs that go with it, and that's why AMA has listed the disease in 1956. But you're right, you are bringing this on yourself somewhat. But sometimes people have so much pain, so much hurt, they use it that way.
Okay, thanks for calling.
a lot, Joe.
All right, Joe. No, Joe's next. Joe from Milton is next.
Okay.
No, you hit the wrong guy.
That was me.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I thought he moved to Milton just like that.
I saw the light flashing, and he was on number 2. All right. Do you have any more comments on his question? Or
no, I just think that it's blaming the alcoholic or the addict. Now, I tell people, listen, I don't blame you for the disease, but I sure as heck blame you for not treating it appropriately. In other words, that's why I get angry with these people, that they're not treating their disease appropriately. But the disease itself is hereditary. And I tell them, you inherited this. And that's what I tell every parent here. If there is addiction in your family, some way, somehow, either alcoholism or addiction with other drugs, be real careful with your kids. Watch them closely. Look at their emails. Look at their stuff. Look and see what they're into, because you want to pick them up at the early stages of addiction.
We have one more break to take, but we're going to take Tom from Sunbury first. Good morning, Tom. You're on the mark with Dr. John Pagana.
I would just like to nitpick a little bit and comment from experience, and I'm sure the doc would realize this. You don't get sober in jail. You get dry in jail. You get sober when you work on this 12-step program.
No doubt about it. I agree with you completely. But most jails do have 12-step programs.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
I agree with you. And a dry drunk is what a lot of people do. In other words, a lot of people go ahead and just stop drinking.
But isn't that
they
the
don't
first
have
step?
the spirituality, and they don't have that spirituality you get from the 12-step program.
But isn't it easier to get to them with some kind of treatment if they are sober?
Exactly.
At least
when they're
not
using,
dry.
it's hard to talk to an alcoholic who's drinking at the time, or an addict who's using. You're better off getting to them with their withdrawal, and say, listen, we have some help available for you, but you got to work the program. Problem is, this is a hard program to work, and you got to work it hard.
1-800-795-9565 is our toll-free hotline number. Email us at onthemark@wkok.com. We're talking to Dr. John Pagana. Our topic this morning is drugs and all its fascinating iterations, if you will, from tobacco to alcohol. We've covered it all this morning. We invite your questions at 1-800-795-9565 or email us at onthemark@wkok.com. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
While looking for a vehicle, you know that if it sounds too good to be true, chances are it is too good to be true. You get the runaround, got to go from place to place. Well, you can just skip all of that and go straight to Sunbury Motor Company. Sunbury Motor Company has been satisfying more customers and selling more cars since 1915, so you know they've got it right. No offers that look good on paper or online, and then you get disappointed when you see them in person. Sunbury Motor Company offers a lineup few other auto dealers in the area can compete with. With the inventory of Ford, Hyundai, Kia, and Lincoln vehicles, there will be no problem finding the right vehicle that fits your needs and your budget. And the friendly, knowledgeable staff's ready and able to help you with everything from the test drive to the drive off the lot. See for yourself at Sunbury Motors. Sunbury Motors, Ford, Lincoln, Hyundai in North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury. And Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf. Look for them online anytime at sunburymotors.com.
Construction companies. Let's talk value. Your clients want it. Their clients want it. And you deserve it too. That's why JCB, the world's #1 backhoe manufacturer, is introducing the new JCB 3CX. With telematics and a 5-year warranty, both standard, it's the best value backhoe in Pennsylvania. Ready to lease today from only $7.99 a month at Stevenson JCB. Go to jcbpromo.com/new demo. Offer valid until December 31st, 2014 on select new models at participating JCB dealers and is subject to JCB finance approval.
Adopting a new pet is a rewarding experience.
And Shelter Pets makes super pets. Your new best friend will steal your heart, bring you happiness, and enrich your life for years to come. You can make a difference in the life of an animal. Adopt and bring home a shelter pet today. To find out more, visit theshelterpetproject.org. This message has been brought to you by the Humane Society of the United States, Maddie's Fund, and the Ad Council.
Time once again for full-on fun in the corn maze at Cole's Stony Hill Tree Farm. Now through November 2nd, Fridays through Sundays, roam the maze and also browse the Christmas shop. Price is just $8 for adults, kids 5 through 12, and seniors $5, kids 4 and under free. Upcoming special events include Howl at the near full moon of the maze on September 12th and the car show at the maze with the chicken barbecue and corn roast on the 13th. Get details at colesstonyhill.com. Cole's Stony Hill Tree Farm. Just follow the signs from the red light in Washingtonville.
Welcome back to On the Mark. Our guest this morning, Dr. John Pagano. We have Paul from Northumberland.
I'd love to know what this office visit is going to cost with John.
Paul, you're on the mark. So.
Paul, how are you?
It's nice to give back to the community. It's important. And when you give to someone, it's the person who gives is the best. That's the best for me. When I open the clinic, and I do work there, my satisfaction is immediate because helping people is valuable.
Paul, you're on the mark. Good morning.
Okay. You have been speaking about cases in which is described as a disease. But what the doctor hasn't done is he hasn't given the people the American Medical Association's definition of what a disease is.
Okay.
Is that what you want to hear? Okay. We'll ask him. Thank you, Paul. What
do you think the definition of the disease is?
Well, no,
he's gone.
He's gone. We let him ask a question. I think he wanted an answer to the question.
Well, basically, a disease is certain signs and symptoms. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to cure it. How many diabetics do I cure? None. How many people with heart disease do I cure? None. How many alcoholics do I cure? None. Because once you're an alcoholic, you're always an alcoholic. And you always have to protect your sobriety. But there's certain chemicals in the brain. There's certain things that happen. But however, I tell people, listen, I don't blame you for the disease. You inherited it. However, I do blame you for not getting good treatment. And that's the problem. There's a lot of addicts out there and alcoholics out there who are not being appropriately treated. And sometimes they get forced through the courts to get into treatment. Sometimes their employer says you either get sober or you lose your job. That's how we need to do. You can't enable these people. And sometimes the family members enable them. And this disease affects the whole family. And that's the bad thing.
Would you think it made a big difference when they said, that this is a disease, that they've defined it as that? Does that really matter?
Disease, I think what he's referring to is if you get diabetes, is that your fault? Well, yeah, if you're 300 pounds, that could be your fault. Yeah. But, if you're thin and you've exercised and you still get diabetes, or you get type 1 diabetes, that's a virus that sets that off. So, I think that when we put causes on things, I think we have to be real careful. I think I approach these with compassion. However, if someone doesn't want to get sober, I get tough as nails. I will turn them into the police department. I will do that. I've had judges ask me, if this person picks up again, and they pick up again, please call me. And I send them in. They go to jail. I think that there's a tender love and there's a tough love. And sometimes the best way to handle this is tough. And these parents who are taking their kids and get them sober, they need to have other parents tell them, do the tough things. Because what you're locking your kid out of your house, you need to do that in order to get your kids sober. Otherwise, your child's going to wind up dead.
Well, I remember a lady that I worked for owned the radio station that I ran years ago. She had a daughter who got into drugs, and she actually had, I think back then they actually did this, but she had her daughter in effect kidnapped and taken into forced rehab, if you will. Yeah. Is that ever successful, or does it have to be the person wanting it?
If they usually want to have to do it, but sometimes if they get forced into it. In other words, this mother said to this child, unless you go to rehab, you are not coming back in our house. You're going to be on the streets and you're going to hurt.
That's basically
maybe
what
they
she
have
said,
to hurt for a while before they get help. We have a thing that you have to reach the bottom. Well, sometimes you show people where they're going. they sometimes get help then.
Well, we have a question from Caitlin who said, what would the doctor suggest for an addict who is a non-theist? A 12-step program that involves asking an imaginary friend to help you will not work for non-theists like me and my family. Is there anything else that works? I think she missed the part where you said God as you define him.
And that's what it does. If you don't think in this universe there's a power greater than yourself, then you can't be in a 12-step program. But if you think there's a power greater than yourself, whatever you define that as, okay, then you could do. You could say it's a chair over there, okay? If that's what you want to do. Most people get through to God, and God as you understand Him. And there's a lot of people, and I can tell this by going to meetings. The people who have 2 years in there have a lot of spirituality. Whether you want to call it Jesus Christ, you want to call it God as you understand Him, whatever term you want to use, that it works.
I'd like to ask you a question about the number of people who are in jails having to do mostly with minor drug problems. Should we do something different from having something like 10% of our population in jail?
There's not a whole lot of people in jails with minor, using marijuana or a little something like that. That doesn't happen very often. That's pretty rare. They're usually either sellers, okay, or they're using and causing trouble. In other words, if I have 6 kids that go out drinking, they're high school kids and they go out drinking, one kid gets in a fight and winds up in jail or winds up in the emergency room, that's the kid I worry about. That's the addict, okay? They get into trouble when they drink. When drinking causes problems, you've got a drinking problem, okay? Very simple.
Okay.
That's a good definition.
But with marijuana, which is a much less addictive drug, in fact known pretty much as not being addictive, maybe habitual.
Well, I'm not 100% sure of that.
None of us are 100% sure.
Because let me tell you,
this is unfinished science.
Yeah, you're right. Not about 11% of kids will get addicted, and about 7 or 8% of adults will get addicted. So to marijuana,
of our total population, are you users or?
People
all kids
using on a regular basis.
People using on the
regular basis.
Okay.
In other words, I'm talking about kids who are using every day.
I'm so much against kids using drugs. One of the reasons I want legalization is because less kids get alcohol now than did in Prohibition. I'm hoping less kids get drugs if we get rid of Prohibition and start using a medical.
What I think we have to look at Washington and Colorado to see exactly what's happening. And if that happens, maybe it is worth it.
Well, the Prohibition Amendment didn't really work. It created a whole criminal class that hadn't been anticipated. You could make the argument that the war on drugs has done a similar thing.
Exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. I still say there's going to be people making money on this thing, and it's going to be a criminal element somewhat. However, maybe it would solve it. Obviously, the war on drugs is not working. Maybe let's look for other things.
But people are still going to get addicted, aren't they?
But I think that we have to be real careful about preventing addiction. And people who have hereditary predispositions, be real careful with those people.
Well, it's a long haul. I mean, you got to be in it for the long haul.
And that's what they're trying to do. The United Way, I'm on their council, and we're trying to get into the school districts and get these kids who have the pain and hurt and dysfunctional and risk, get them help.
We've been talking to Dr. John Pagana, a family practice physician from Sunbury who's done extensive work in drug and alcohol abuse and prevention. And it's been fascinating having you with us this morning, Dr. Pagana. Thank you for taking 90 minutes out here. Very busy day to join us. We appreciate it. And Than, always good to see you. We'll be back tomorrow with more of On the Mark. And on Friday, it'll be you and Ben. You can get into some good arguments. This is WKOK Radio in Sunbury, Pennsylvania. It's 10 o'clock.